Good afternoon. Welcome to this session on branding circularity for consumer value. We have an awesome setup for you. A very nice group of speakers who will talk about circular economy, its importance to customers, and we'll move from focusing on individual companies to talking about eco-labels and their importance to this. For the first part of the session, we'll have presenters present for 10 minutes, and after that there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions from the audience. And we'll have a roving microphone for that. So if you have any questions to a presenter, please wait until the end of their presentation and you might get an opportunity to ask a question. We will also have a poll in the later part of the session, so do keep your WCEF application handy for that purpose. So we'll do a little bit of voting after the midpoint. With that, let's move to our keynote speaker. He is Mr. Anirban Kaushal from Mahindra Group, where he is the Chief Sustainability Officer. Welcome.
Hyvää iltapäivää. Onnelu sadapuhua talatanan. Tamarita suomen kielitaidokseni. So now let's talk about more difficult things. India is just about discovering the pleasures of a use and throw economy, even as the conversation on responsible consumption is growing around the world, and countries like Finland are well on their way on that path. But interestingly, for a country like India, it's like going back to ensure that practices and approaches that were so popular before, including the circle of cloth which you see on the slide, are not lost forever. Unfortunately, these practices are getting sacrificed at the altar of development. It's happened in many, many countries around the world over the last century, and I'm not surprised that as the country develops, we are finding that the practices of responsible consumption are taking a bit of a backseat. However, environmental disasters like the landfill in the city of Mumbai and that lake in the city of Bengaluru, which catches fire once in a while, and the possibility of material shortages, materials which we usually assume will always be available, is prompting the need to embrace circularity. Now, businesses understand this. They understand the economic value of circularity, and they understand that they need to respond to these pressures that are happening in the world. And so they take on projects like making carpets from soiled gloves, which would otherwise go to the landfill, but now they get converted to carpets. Or making transformer cores from scrap metal, which is a byproduct of our stampings business, gets used by another business to make transformer cores. Or even taking waste sand from the foundry, which would otherwise again go to landfill, and because they're very fine, dust would go up into the air, cause pollution, and so on, and use it to make bricks, and therefore not use regular sand, the dredging of which causes a huge amount of environmental issues. Now, businesses understand the value of all of this, and by taking these actions, you prevent some materials from going to landfills, and you upcycle some materials for greater value. And it's not difficult for businesses to kind of include circularity as a part of the overall sustainability agenda and even put it into a sustainability framework which the business may have. And it's not difficult because businesses know that circularity helps to mitigate risk, earn money, save cost, and so on. So the value proposition for a business, and therefore the branding opportunity for the business, is very clear. Investors love listening to stories of this kind. But the average consumer wonders, what's in it for me? Which really brings us to the question that what is the source of consumer value? Here is a very simplified model of a very vast subject, which of course we can't cover in 10 minutes' time, but the model gives a sense of the key questions, key issues to answer the question, what are the sources of consumer value? And like any other pyramid, it's only after the issues at the bottom of the pyramid are taken care of that the consumer finds value in issues which are higher up in the pyramid. So to understand this better, with your permission, may I ask you a few questions? Will you answer and work with me through this presentation? Thank you. So question, if the product uses recycled material, but doesn't solve your problems, doesn't do the job you want it to do, will you buy it? You're absolutely right. Doing wonderful. So the next one. It uses recycled material, solves your problem, but it's too expensive. Will you buy it? Perhaps no. There were a few maybes. Okay, some people like buying expensive stuff. So if the product uses recycled material, solves your problem, fits your budget, but it's not something that you really like to do, like to be seen in, or like to be with, would you buy it? There you go. You've got some no's and you've got some yeses as we are moving up the pyramid. Therefore, the answer is perhaps. So how can circular economy add to customer value and build a brand? What do you think that answer would be? Sorry? Put it all together? Do you want to add something beyond that? A bit of design thinking. It's a little more difficult than yes and no, as you can see. So here's the proposition. Put everything together and make circular cool. Because if you ask people to adopt circularity, or why people, let's talk about us, would we accept circularity simply because it's a good thing to do or the responsible thing to do? Maybe some of us will. But if circularity were to help products become useful, affordable, and cool, things you like to be with, then this is likely to become a movement. And if it does become a movement, perhaps one of these blurbs or all of these blurbs could be eco-labels. And perhaps the eco-labels could add to the possibility of making it cool. And if a movement does develop, then we would have, all of us would, as we say in the Mahindra Group, rise for good. Kiitos.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Koch? Over there, there's one. Just wait a minute for the microphone.
Thank you, sir, for an excellent presentation. My name is Avtar Matharu, Green Chemistry Centre of Excellence, University of York. Who are the coolest enablers in India, Bollywood or the Indian cricket team?
You know, if I were to look at it from a circularity point of view, I would have to say Bollywood, because there are more scripts that get recycled in Bollywood.
Thank you.
Thank you for a very difficult question. I hadn't thought of that one before.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I just want to know that whether in making branding, do you have any cultural heritage value? Because you showed the dress, Indian dress, and this is very important for the sustainability. So do you have any consideration in regards to cultural heritage value? Thank you.
So yes, in every society there are issues of cultural heritage. There are signs of cultural heritage. In all our houses we have the same. And consumers have their own way of dealing with it. I know, you know that it's a constant challenge between generations as to what is the culture that you want to take forward. So I don't think either circularity or branding will help resolve that question. It'll continue to exist. But whatever is the prevalent mood of society in that country or in that place at that point in time, tapping into it is what probably would lead to being cool or design thinking, or you could express it in many different ways. But at the end of the day, it's fundamental marketing of understanding consumer preferences and making sure that you tap into it. I hope that answers your question.
Anyone else?
Right now, for the consumer market in the West, being sustainable on its own is cool. So you could have the ugliest looking product there is, but because it's green, it's got a certain cachet. When we move beyond that, and we actually start getting more products that are sustainable, are we going to have the same lifespan for cool? And in the conventional industry, how long is that lifespan?
It's a very good question, especially if you were to ask somebody from the fashion industry, where the big thing is about, getting people to buy more, use less, and then buy more. And the whole conversation on responsible consumption is to ensure that an asset is used much more than it is used today. So how long would a duration have to be? I suppose, okay, so the short answer is, I don't know. The long answer is that it would probably depend on the product categories that you're talking about. So for example, I have this phone. When I bought this phone, it was the latest phone that was going. Today, it is not the latest phone. 4 generations of phones have happened. So I have people in my house, in my office, especially the youngsters, saying, you've got to change this phone. And I'm looking at it and saying, it works just fine. It does everything that you do. It doesn't hamper anything that I want to do. So why on earth do you want me to change it? So this is a conversation, I suppose, that will go on and on. But if one were to move towards responsible consumption, ensuring that assets get used longer. In fact, just an analogy. In our factories, we do this all the time. So if you set up a factory, and if you run a factory, and if you have a business with a factory, you want your machines to run as long as possible, because that's how you earn money. I don't understand why that should not also happen in your house, because after all, you've spent hard-earned money on whatever you bought. I hope that goes somewhere towards answering your question. Else you can always hold a gun to me later.
Any more questions? We have time for one more. Over there, gentlemen.
Matt Roberts from the UK. I suppose the easy question, it's not an easy answer, is you've just given us Branding 101, which I think we need. Why? Why do we as a sector find it difficult to engage customers? Because most of us work in businesses that are full of marketing departments, but we're still rather po-faced about some of this stuff. And we're not a fun club to join. We're not a cool club to join. We're a rather somber sect or cult even. Why do you think we've managed to do that to ourselves, and how do we get out of it?
So thank you for recognizing it as Marketing 101. It is. When I looked at the topic, much as I would have liked to come up with a new marketing theory, it just didn't seem to make sense. However, you would notice that every time there is a new fad or a new concept, a new something that comes up, this whole conversation about how to make it popular starts all over again. And again, Marketing 101, the conversation is almost always inside out. And that's why you have these huge debates. But the moment you look at it outside in and flip the question around, it's much easier to handle. So at this point in time, in most businesses and in most spaces, it's the supplier or the manufacturer who's talking about circularity or producing green goods. And most of the conversations are happening between sustainability departments, manufacturing people, and the supplier organizations. Very few times do you get the marketing guy into this conversation. So the moment the marketing guy comes into these conversations and applies the rules of marketing, you will hear a conversation like we just had for the last 10 or 15 minutes. That's why we have this phenomenon happening over and over again, be it for a new car, be it for a new product, and now for this new concept called circularity. I hope that takes it somewhere. Thank you very much. Or Kiitos.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Oskar Korkman is going to come on stage to tell us about some very interesting research on the changes that consumer behavior is going through.
Thank you. Hello everyone. So I'm going to speak about how to make circularity cool, or at least one version of the truth of that. So the presentation is based on some quite extensive research that we have done last year in several different geographies, mainly in US, India, and the Nordic countries. So the key research question was actually not about circularity. So we were looking into what are the kind of aspirational goods of the future. And the reason why we asked this question was that there's a lot of societal changes happening, issues regarding sustainability, but also digital and technological changes that made us feel that people's relationship to buying stuff will change. We also had a feeling when we got into this work that there is a forming, emerging new marketing model, consumer model, that goes against the traditional model of abundance. Goes against the idea that new is the best marketing slogan there is. Because that's a fact, that has been the marketing slogan for the last 30 years at least. You just label something new, you increase your cycles and you push out more and more stuff, and that's aspirational, has been aspirational to consumers. So in consumer behavior, we see kind of a disruption in this behavior. We see people starting to behave in different ways. And the key message for this presentation is that circularity and sustainability seems to be a part of the formula. At least we don't believe that's the whole truth or the value proposition in itself. A couple of facts about what we did, just so you know the background, and I will then go to the findings more after that. So we were applying some maybe a little bit kind of alternative market research methodology to understand this phenomenon. So we were studying something that we call the leading edge, which are carefully selected consumers that are the types of consumers that are creating new behaviors and testing out, experimenting with doing new things. So we met for a very long time with 50 of these in 4 different cities. There were 2 cities in Sweden, then San Francisco, and then Bangalore in India. And then we also, what we did was that we also quantified all of these behaviors just to see that what of these behaviors are actually something that will become mass market, and what are the behaviors that are predominantly leading edge and not necessarily something that will spread into the mass market. This was a purely commercial project. Citra was involved in this, but we have also four global clients, all who are in the business of pushing more stuff into the market at an increasing speed. The companies were both from Europe and US. So that's the background. Then one of the key findings, and this might feel a little bit theoretical, but I think it's extremely important for this audience to think about this. So traditionally, when you are kind of tracking values, how they are changing amongst consumers, you can say that, okay, now there's an increase of more collective values, now there's increase of more individualization, now there's an increase of people liking novelty and so on. What we found when studying leading edge is that there's a polarization. So people are actually kind of going in all directions at the same time. And so you can have people in a postmodern society that in a way are kind of functioning in a paradoxical way. So people love the fact that something has longevity, something is new, and something is kind of increasing value over time. But at the same time, they can be massively fascinated by newness and change and so on. So what we found out was a basic conclusion from the whole research, which you can read from a fairly extensive report that you can find on Citra's homepage also, is that companies then can start to combine these different behaviors into brands, into products, into services, are actually those who are going to be successful. Tesla is a good example, for instance. So Tesla is, in this model, clearly something that is a part of a narrative of a better world. They are a part of a new energy narrative that is aimed to save the planet. But at the same time, they are building also this kind of very traditional idea, which is a very kind of male-dominant idea of egoistic need of owning a fast car that you feel powerful, and it's shimmery, it looks good, and it makes you look good in front of other people. And there's tons of these examples where actually the values that circularity and sustainability represent in the market are combined with something which together then creates something that is felt to be aspirational, something that people actually dream of for and want to buy into. And in the study, we identified 4 so-called value opportunities that all have a very important element of sustainability and circularity. But the point here is that the value proposition in itself is not necessarily only about sustainability. So for instance, the value domain that we call flexible stuff is the idea that people find that there's great status currently in being very autonomous and mobile and kind of not committing too much to stuff that is kind of slowing you down or weighing you down. So idea about light stuff, something that keeps you flexible, something that is multi-modular, that changes over time, is something that you can use for different purposes. You can see tons of cases and examples of kind of emerging brands that are kind of tapping into this domain. Actually, in fashion, this is happening a lot. So instead of having different clothing for different occasions, companies are investing in creating kind of clothing that you can both use for work, travel, and festivities, and your free time, and for sports even. Pleasurable engagement is maybe the value opportunity domain that is closest to our ideas about sustainability and circularity today. Here we, however, found that engaging in big collective stories about saving the planet is something that has been seen as, has been often portrayed as something that you feel a little bit guilty about. There's kind of negative emotions associated to this. So what we see is that there's clearly a domain where circularity and sustainability can be colorful, it can be experiential. It doesn't need to be about like the gray recycled papers and so on, but it can actually be fun and pleasurable and aspirational. The third one is something we call familiar stuff, where a very interesting finding. We actually found that leading edge doesn't associate new and novelty anymore to new stuff, but actually the fact that you are owning something for a long time is new. Because it's such a new thing in the market, something that Patagonia does, for instance, the whole idea about kind of keeping things for a long time, repairing it, making it more valuable over its life cycle. Then the fourth domain called perfect stuff, where we can see clearly a big part of the audience being extremely selective about consumption in terms of buying something that is perfect for purpose, perfect in terms of the aesthetics, perfect of innovating something that people are fairly used to. For instance, Kickstarter is full of these projects where you are developing the perfect backpack or the perfect this and that. And what we found out that actually sustainability and circularity is a part of this perfect formula. It's almost impossible today to do something which people would perceive as a perfect object if it's not sustainable. Okay, that's very, very briefly some of the findings. There's much more in the report, so please look into that. So what we felt from this study, what is happening globally, is that or say also in India and China, where it's perhaps not so self-evident, the model of abundance is being questioned. There is new behaviors that has to do with people not only consuming in terms of refreshing themselves and getting new things in order to feel alive. There are also very different kinds of behaviors steering this market. There's new systemic values for success. Systemic meaning that circularity and sustainability is the part of the future value formulas, but they are not alone that. And then the last point is that sustainability is in almost all cases an important part of a brand or value proposition, product or service in the market. But we need to be smart about how to actually brand them, how to market them in terms of making it aspirational and something that people really want and want to have. Thank you. That was my speech.
Thank you very much. Questions on this very interesting study? Anyone who would like to start and get the ball rolling? Okay, I have one.
There's one there.
There's one there. Darn.
Okay.
It's okay, the microphone's right here.
Hi. So, how much does culture play a role in these kind of things? Is it what is the priority? Culture is the topmost priority when people are thinking about this, especially in the East and the West, or?
I think what is more, and this is my point of view, but what is more dominant is in which phase of a kind of consumption history a certain geography has. So in Western countries where we have basically gone through a long phase of abundant consumption, you have certain like post-material values developing in society, where people are starting to value more people than stuff, for instance. And when you're looking at emerging markets, I think you can very clearly see a similar development. What is, however, happening is that the age of abundance was so explosive in certain, let's say, urban China, for instance. So the kind of counter reaction comes much more quicker. So it doesn't take, for these things to emerge in different parts of China, it doesn't take 30 years as it would have taken in US, for instance. It's already happening. And that's just because it was such a shock that you immediately had this money where you could just consume. So people started to very quickly, and now I'm talking especially about leading edge, start to question the model and try to find alternatives to it. So what I'm saying is that not necessarily so much like culture in terms of national culture, but in terms of consumption culture and the history of how people have consumed in that country is defining quite much how people relate to this.
Thanks for a great presentation. I work in policy, so I'm wondering how government can harness this thinking in terms of our branding, our policies. Sometimes policies are very well received, like if you're introducing a city bike or a bike share or bike lane program to residents that are clamoring for it. But what about when you have a citizenry that is not open when we do zero waste? So what if people see that as a straightforward sacrifice or a request?
Yeah.
They make sacrifices, number one. And number two, what do you do with the people, your constituency that is very much on board, but feels like their options fall short of what they're aspiring to? In other words, they want to buy a toothpaste tube that is recyclable and cannot.
I think it's a very, very good question. I think I'm not an expert in policy making, but I would say that probably the same applies to companies also. So we are coming into a phase of time where you need to start to see circularity as some kind of overall value proposition to the consumer, in your case, the citizen, where you can actually see that circularity is there as a component driving certain aspirations that people have. So I think the biggest mistake is probably more like almost like an organizational question, that you, in many companies, tend to still see the issues about sustainability as circularity something as a separate kind of a silo almost that is different from overall branding and marketing. So I think people like you should help branding people to see the kind of almost aspirational value of these ideas, how it can play a part in some kind of bigger purpose of companies, and why not like cities or like even countries going forward. And then your second question, sorry, could you repeat?
What do you do when you have a group that, a population that, or a subset of the population that is very much on board with the premise, but feels like the market opportunities, the consumption opportunities don't match their
Yeah. So what these people do, leading edge, first of all, they work from within the market. So although they are kind of those who are creating new ways of dealing with things, they are not the ones who are kind of, they are not necessarily the ones who are kind of protesting and so on. They are seeing the market mechanism as the strongest mechanism for change. So what these people do is that they found their own startups. They start to create businesses of their own. So I think it's in a policy situation, it would be to provide almost the resources and tools for creating. I don't know, is that an answer?
Thank you. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for right now. But again, the report is available on the Sitra website. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, to talk about one company's efforts in the area of circular economy and in making that visible to the consumers, we have Ms. Anna-Chiara Torsiana from Samsung Nordics. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Matti. It's a great pleasure to be here. I feel excellently introduced, because we've heard about consumer value, we heard about mobile phones, there was an example there. So this is what the presentation is about. My presentation is about developing the business case for circular economy in consumer technology with a focus on consumers. I work at Samsung. Samsung is a leader in the consumer technology sector. And we all know that technology is one of the main drivers of change in society today, and it's an enabler for the circular economy. But as an industry, we also have a responsibility to move towards more circular business models for our products and services. At the core of everything we do at Samsung is innovation. Innovation is the core value and sits very, very close to our history as a company. And we try to develop meaningful innovation. Meaningful innovation for us is something that improves the consumer experience, something that makes life easier, or something that contributes to a better society. And the focus is the consumer. We want to create value for the consumer. If we have satisfied customers, they will keep coming back to us, they will love our brand, and we will keep succeeding as a company. So what I'd like to share with you is some examples where we see that having satisfied consumers is actually linked to the circular economy. And these are new things that we've started to do and things that we're looking at for the future to create consumer value from circular economy. So consumers need to be satisfied with our product. They need to feel it's a great product, not just when they buy it, the day they buy it, but during the entire lifetime. This is why we offer, with all our smartphones, but also with many other products, we offer a warranty, so we promise to repair or replace the product, going beyond the legal requirements, within boundaries of reasonable use of a smartphone, for example. And in some cases, we can replace it with a refurbished phone so that we prolong the life of the phone even more. We do the same thing for TVs, 2 years. We have 10 years warranty for key components in white goods, for example. This is really, really important. Satisfied customers, our brand wins, and the products can be used longer. We have developed an app called Smart Tutor. Smart Tutor allows to connect a phone to a service technician remotely so that the consumer can get help with their problems without having to leave their home or without visiting a service center. We've measured the impact of this, and in 2016 we could see that we could solve almost 80% of the cases through this remote support. Again, we get happy customers, we get service and maintenance on the phone, and we also help prolong the life of the products. We know that one of the main reasons consumers come to repair their phones is water damage, because we use the smartphones everywhere. So we have developed, for our 2 latest flagship smartphones, we have developed water and dust resistant design, and we have certified it by an international standard. This is another example of making life easier, fun, but also allowing for longer product use and longer lasting products. External memory. By allowing large external memory, consumers can use their phones longer because they can upgrade and they have all the memory space they need for their videos and photos. So what we're seeing is that through our consumer insight, we can find things or features that make consumers happy by improving the quality of the products and the services. And the result, we think, is that the products are used longer. So circular economy and consumer value go hand in hand in these cases. Another important area of innovation for us and the rest of the industry is increasing the recycled plastics in our products. For example, for our desktop monitors, since 2015, we have 30% recycled plastics content. We have worked very hard to increase recycled plastics in our smartphones as well. And the latest 2 flagship models have recycled plastics in the ear case, package, the inner tray, and in the charger. And not all of this is visible to consumers, but in some cases it is. For example, for our company customers, the B2B customers, they care about these things and they ask these things because they want to signal their environment engagement. Eco-labels play a very important part in this. For example, in the Nordic market, Nordic Swan is the most well-known eco-label. it's known by consumers. As Samsung, we have decided to eco-label with Nordisk One all our TV range for hotel customers. And what is the value for our customers? Well, the biggest hotel chains in the Nordic, by having eco-labeled TVs, they can show their environmental commitment to their customers, to the visitors, and to the staff. And we have seen that the eco-label has very much strengthened our offer and the customer interest in our products. To start wrapping up, we see that if we get satisfied customers, customers who are satisfied throughout the lifetime of the product, we get more loyal customers and we benefit our brand. This is why we've also invested in premium service operations. In all the major cities in the world, we offer very quick service. We promise 1-2 hours repair of a smartphone, TVs and other products as well. And of course, branding these service centers is very, very important because we need to make it attractive for customers. But we're not perfect, and we're trying to improve all the time. So one pain point we see for consumers is consumer insight shows that smartphone users, they're very happy. This is for all brands. They're very happy when they buy the phone, but after a couple of years, they're much less happy with their phone. And one of the main reasons is the battery. We've all experienced it. Battery time gets worse with time. So we're thinking, what can we do with that? And in the Nordics, we are thinking, we should offer a battery exchange. When the consumers come to repair another component or to get support, we should offer a battery exchange for our latest models. Because this way, the phone can be used longer, the battery will work very well, the old battery can be recycled, and the materials can be recovered. Customers will be happier, they will love our brand, but there is also a benefit for the environment. So these are just some examples of how we think today of the consumer value for circular economy. And we're just at the beginning of the road to a more circular business model. This is only one part of our sustainability work, but we see that it's very, very interesting for consumers. Thank you very much, and I look forward to some questions.
Thank you. Question over here. Third row.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm quite interested in what you talked about, the consumer value and how that relates back to the company profit and bottom line. So, for example, when you talked about the battery, the phone lasts longer, the consumer doesn't buy as many phones. Have you calculated that back to see whether there's a balance out, or does that mean that Samsung ultimately has less money at the end because it sells fewer phones?
We see a very clear link between satisfied customers and satisfied consumer and consumer retention. That link is very, very clear. So we know that if we make our customers very happy, they will keep coming back to us. And we need to make them happy. We need to go the extra mile. And therefore, even thinking of new services like the battery exchange is a good way to go. And we also know that this is studies about this, that prolonging the life of a phone also reduces the CO2 impact.
Other questions? Right over there.
How do you balance the marketing strategy to increase the consumption of telephones by people, or to change the telephones, with this circular economy concept? I mean, because the team work together, the marketing and the sustainability.
So what I presented today is not sustainability work. It's our business. It's our work to make customers happy, and it's our marketing. But there is a circular economy aspect in it. In our industry, the pace of innovation is very, very fast. And it's innovation in what you can do with your phone to the telecom network. So we're part of that. We're actually driving that. We want to be the most innovative company in our industry. But we see that quality and innovation, they go hand in hand. And we also see that a smartphone has a second and a third life. So the most innovative users will have the newest one, and then there is somebody in your family or a second-hand market who can take your product if you always want to have the latest. But we want to be one of the innovative companies, and we want to have innovation and quality together.
Other questions?
Hello, my name is Tapani Jokinen. I'm from Puzzle Phone, sustainable smartphone area, and my area is in business. What I want to ask on Samsung is basically that have Samsung changed their strategy, because in Barcelona World Mobile Conference in 2015, when you launched the latest Galaxy in there, and your CEO said that because all the market insight says that people want to keep their phones a little bit longer time than 2.5 years. And he said that I'm really worried about it, and we are working internally that how we could actually create more push and desire that people want to change often. And now last summer, when you launched the tablet, for example, also your marketing head of marketing was saying that also you are looking how you could speed up the life cycle, the lifespan of the tablets. So is there any change on this kind of strategy at the moment?
We believe that technology and innovation can have benefit for our consumers and our customers, and we're pushing innovation. But we also know that the products have different lives. There's a first life, there is a second life. We see that, I just saw recently statistics that there is no smartphones end up in the recycling system. And that's partly because they have a second and third life somewhere else. So it's like any other sector. You believe in your products and in your quality, but you also want to help consumers keep the products longer and have a second or third life. Well, we don't know, and we're going to find out, actually. We're going to start looking closely at that. But the first piece of evidence we have is that they don't end up in the official recycling schemes because they have a value. And we also know that many phones that are, the Nordic markets, for example, we're in Finland, people are very technology interested and they want to be the front runners. But this is a market that sells a lot of second-hand phones to other markets, which is positive. It's circular. So the two things are not in contradiction. What I didn't talk about also today was all our efforts for a responsible production. For example, our efforts in reducing the CO2 emission in manufacturing, in setting climate targets, with responsible procurement. It's part of our strategy, and it's part of our business model.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. We already saw a little bit about eco-labels in the previous presentation, and now we're going to shift to talking more about those. And to begin that section of the session, we have a poll question for you. So please take out your smartphones and find the WCEF app. And the question is, how useful are eco-labels in communicating circularity to consumers? You should find that in your smartphone, in the app, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to vote. We are in Helsinki Hall if somebody's wondering which one to choose. Looks like everybody's voted. Can we have the results, please? How useful are they? So most people, vast majority, say useful. Some say very useful, 30%, and then there's 15% in the whole that think they're useless. Hopefully we'll have an even better idea of how useful they are after the next couple of presentations. We're going to have 2 presentations back to back, and then the presenters will stay here on stage to have a little bit of a dialogue and to answer your questions. So 2 presentations, and after that you'll have an opportunity to ask them some more on this topic. First person to present is Dr. Lea Kauppi, who's the Director General of the Finnish Environment Institute, Syke. Welcome, Lea.
Okay, good afternoon. So as Matti already introduced us two, we are talking about eco-labels, and I'm trying very briefly to introduce you to the role of eco-labels in communicating the sustainability, both to the consumers, of course, that's the kind of a starting point, but as well to the companies. And then also discuss a bit how eco-labels, how they can be seen as a benchmarking tool, and how consumers and companies can use them in their own actions, let's say, towards a circular economy. And then finally, a few ideas about how eco-labels could be developed, particularly regarding the circular economy, circularity, how the criteria, what kind of criteria you should introduce into those eco-labels. And this last part is mainly based on our research in my institute, particularly on a Nordic Swan eco-label and how that today relates to circular economy. So, of course, eco-labels, they are part of a big family of policy instruments. I mean, we all know they are the legal instruments, directives, they are the norm standards for certain, let's say, harmful substances and environmental permits, of course. Then we have the economic instruments where one can think about carbon dioxide tax on cars, for example, but as well the public procurement. That's another example. But then we have the third group of policy instruments based on information. Simply, and there the eco-labels, of course, they are one of the key, and maybe the most, the easiest to understand instrument for consumers. And of course, when we are here in Finland, one of the Nordic countries, where for us the Nordic Swan is the most well-known, but another very well-established one is, of course, the European Union eco-label flower. So, to put it simply, the eco-label, it tells the consumer which products, that this product is really preferable regarding the environmental characteristics of the product. And it's typically for a specific product or service category. And that, of course, the basic aim here is that eco-labels should help consumer to make environmentally friendly choices. And so you don't have to dig deeply into some databases to find out what kind of product you are buying. And of course, in the longer term, there's also the purpose is that this is a tool for continuous environmental improvement in production. So the basic idea is, of course, in all the eco-labels that they are voluntary, and the more widely they are used in the world, the better, of course. So because that means that they have, I mean, the credibility is even higher then. There are also groupings for eco-labels, and when we talk about Nordic Swan, it's called a Type 1 eco-label, and that tells that it's voluntary, like they all are. It's a multiple criteria based, so there are different criteria, and the key point, of course, is also that these Type 1 eco-labels, they are third-party program based, so it means that the consumer really can rely that the criteria and the certificate behind the eco-label is given by a third party, and that authorizes the use of these labels. And this is a difference to the Type 2 eco-labels, which are then really self-declaration claims. So it's up to the company to give this. So there's no third-party program behind that. And the third one is then even more demanding, keeping in mind that it has a quantitative life cycle assessment behind that. But I'm really more talking about this eco-label Type 1. So when we are talking about brand value, that doesn't come by itself. When you get an eco-label, it doesn't in the beginning maybe mean too much, but it's simply a question that, or the characteristic that develops over time. And the better the eco-labels are known and recognized, then typically, of course, the brand value is getting higher and higher. So if we think about how for example, the Nordic Swan has developed, so where did we start then? It was really the main items there were that it's ecologically sound and that the product is safe. And safe in the beginning particularly meant that it's really, we were quite often meaning with this that the chemicals used in the product, that they in that sense the product is safe. But then over time there are more and more criteria taken into account, and now we come closer to circularity already, because when we are talking about durable, safe products and that they are based on sustainable materials. So then you can clearly see that there is this development to closer to circularity as well. But the criteria setting is really, it's a way to integrate new issues there over time. And now what we can clearly anticipate at the moment is that there will be, and there is, I could say already, a stronger focus on circular economy, and at least one should maybe consider more and more also how to include sharing economy, or even more the service sector or services into eco-labels. I mean, there are already some services that can have eco-labels, but that is still in a bit in its infancy. So talk about the future, how based on our research, how we can see what should be included in the eco-label criteria, keeping in mind the promotion of circular economy. So one can look at that based on the different phases of the whole life cycle of the product. So of course in the production stage, the criteria for material circulation should be possible, so that that means of course that there shouldn't be any harmful substances that prevent the recycling. And then also the criteria for byproduct use. Then of course there are many different aspects regarding the extension of the product life. So, and these have been mentioned already in the earlier presentations, many of them, the multifunctionality, and that the product should be upgradable, repairable of course, and even remanufactured. But then really something that there is at least still a lot of work to do, how to include the use intensity. So yeah, exactly this sharing economy services, how they could be eco-labeled, and that certainly needs a lot of more work still. So overall, when we are talking about really circular economy, then one really has to go through the whole cycle and then develop the criteria based on those. But no, as a conclusion from this, one can say that eco-labels as such, because when you have the flexibility of developing the criteria, then they provide a good basis for promoting products and services which are in line with the circular economy. And then final word, kind of a question to you. I mean, we also always think about, when we talk about eco-labels, that the consumer is in focus, and that they make the choices easy. But then one can also ask, is consumer really this, as we could say, king or queen? There are many important decisions made already much before the consumer is making his or her decisions. And really, I would put the emphasis on the design phase, really, because there are often the key decisions are made already. And so that means also that the eco-labels can provide a good benchmark for designers and manufacturers as well. Thank you, and if you are interested in the more detailed results of the project, please visit the website. Thank you.
I would ask you to take a place over there, and we'll invite Ms. Karendal Jensen on the stage to tell us a little bit more about Nordic Swan. She is the Nordic Product Development Manager for Nordic Eco-Labeling.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy to come and speak after you, and it's a good fortune that we have already come close to a lot of the opportunities that you present that an eco-label should do. I will, in a short time, present why we believe that Nordic eco-labeling, and actually also the EU eco-label, is a tool for companies to implement and brand themselves in the circular economy. And why doesn't it do anything? To be able to brand yourself as a sustainable thing or in the circular economy, you need a good brand. And concerning environmental impact, it's also very important that you have a credible brand. And we also believe the Nordic Swan Eco-Label is a credible environmental super brand. We enjoy very high credibility in today's society, at least in the Nordic region. We are very recognized, not only by consumers, but also by purchasers, professional purchasers, and governments and environmental organizations. And we are also known far beyond the Nordic boundaries, and we collaborate a lot with the EU Eco-Label. So we have further spread out than just the Nordic region, which is also why international companies like Samsung decide to take the Nordic Swan as an opportunity. For 27 years, the Nordic Swan Eco-Labeling has been working with the mission to make it easier for everybody to take an environmentally good choice. And this is, of course, with the mission of the consumer, as you said, but it's also with the mission to make it easy for the companies to develop their products in a sustainable way, and afterwards branding themselves with this. And we can offer that also for the circular economy. We have been here for 27 years, and this makes us very uniform system. We are very experienced in what we do. We are well recognized, and we are already out there. We are in the consumer market. We are for the professional purchasers. They know us, which makes it easier for us to communicate with companies, customers. And another very important thing is that we have 56 different criteria documents covering more than 200 product types and services. And with more than 25,000 eco-label products and services out there today, we are very broad and have a broad spectrum and great possibility to enhance the circular economy in many different parts of the society. But that's just the brand. Then we need the circularity. That's why we're here, right? The Nordic Swan, the reason why I believe, and why we believe that we are part of the circular economy is that we have a circular approach to the life cycle assessment. We believe that when we set up our criteria for a product, we focus on assuring that environmental impacts in one stage of your life cycle doesn't have a negative influence in another part of your life cycle. We are very much aware that especially the design phase has a huge consequence on later stages in a product's life cycle, especially in the recycle approach, which is also why we focus on setting requirements even within the design phase, which products you use. and to assure that we have good quality of next generation's raw material, we also focus on not putting environmentally damaging chemicals into the product, which can hopefully assure a better raw material supply chain through recycling. And then one thing we do is that we base our criteria on today's opportunities and boundaries of the society. Because we are a consumer label and a label that is out there in the society today, we can't set the requirements in a level that is theory. We need to take the theory of the circular economy and implement it into something practical for producers to be able to work with it in everyday's production. And that, of course, sets some boundaries. Everybody here in this forum knows that there are still boundaries in today's society to make it 100% circular. So we're not there yet, unfortunately, but we're working on it. And we have this opportunity that once every 3 to 5 years, we evaluate our criteria. We look at the society's boundaries and opportunities as of that day, and the production, where are they headed? And then we will strengthen the criteria. And this stepwise approach and tightening the criteria all the time makes it possible for the Nordic Swan Ecolabel and other ecolabels to always push the limit of the circular economy to where it's possible in everyday society. So with these words, I hope that that you can understand why both Nordic Ecolabel and other ecolabels at the same time is a tool for the circular economy.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation into the Nordic Swan. So we have some time for questions. I think I'll start this time, but prepare your questions. We'll have the roving mic in a minute. But I was wondering, both of you talked about the future, and clearly the Nordic Swan has a system for stepwise improvement or development of criteria. What are the major barriers? Why you were talking about societal boundaries, but why can't we get to the perfect circular economy eco-label right now? What kinds of things are slowing down the process, or what kinds of things do you have to take into account as you're developing these tools to be better?
Can I? Yeah. Well, we have identified some major boundaries within, for instance, the infrastructure of handling waste management, especially for normal public waste and dismantling of that. So that's a huge impact. And then we also identify a problem with contamination of recycled material. You don't know what you buy, so you're not 100% sure of the quality, and you don't know if there is unwanted chemicals in it. So that's at least 2. I can mention a lot of others, but I'll stick to those.
And if you also mean why can't we kind of eco-label directly everything that is perfect? I think one problem is also that when you want to introduce new criteria, then they really have to be evidence-based in the sense that you have to be able to show that the product really fulfills them. And I think when you're talking about criteria for circular economy, it's still the field that is under very rapid development.
Yeah, it's certainly evolving, and there's a lot of discussion on even just the basic metrics for circular economy. Thank you. Questions from the audience up there.
Hello, my name is Angelina Korsunova. I work at Aalto University School of Business. Thank you for your presentations, very interesting. I teach a course called Sustainable Business and Consumption. And in the course, we talk about communications. And every year, before we start to talk about eco-labels, I basically ask the students who are business school students How many of you can now tell me how does the EU eco-label look like? And out of 50 or 70 students, well, best case 3 would know. The most recognized is the Nordic swan. Maybe 15 people out of 50 will say, I know the Nordic swan. Also, what we noticed, they have no idea what is the organic eco-label, organic label, and how they are different. So what does the European flower, the eco-label, means, and how is it different from the organic label? So my question is, are you aware of, are there any established mechanisms on the national level, or maybe on the Nordic level, of how do people learn about eco-labels at schools, or is, at which step in your life do you get interested in eco-labels? Or is it solely the responsibility of the consumer to always go online and just type in, I want to know how does eco-label look like in Europe? And of course, in our course, we show the eco-labels and say, okay, this is what it means, but it's only about 50 students taking the course each year, so.
Well, thank you for that. Well, I think I need to answer that. It has been a long journey for the Nordic Swan eco-label to become as recognized as we are today. And we are continuously, it's hard work every day to keep up the recognition. We do a lot of different things. We have focus for new mothers, we have institution things, there's been making small movies, so it's a hard work. And I think one of the obstacles for the EU eco-label is that this hard work that we put into Nordic Swan eco-label takes a lot of resources. And the EU eco-label sometimes lack the amount of resources in every country. Of course, we do it in the Nordic region with the Nordic Swan, together with the Nordic Swan. But if you come to other parts of Europe, it's relatively difficult to get the resources to keep up a recognition level that we have. So, but thank you for your effort.
But in general, of course, I think starting with the children in the daycare centers and schools, they are very kind of susceptible for this kind of information. So, but I think there will always be this problem with the specific eco-label, so be it any other trademark kind of, because it's simply people mainly look at something or look for something different. I mean, they want the product, and not everybody is so interested in it. But I wonder, I mean, maybe we should or could put even more emphasis on retailers and purchasers of those companies. I mean, so that simply there would be more and more products available.
Yes. We already do a great job within that area. So yes, we're working on all parts. Our main customer area is definitely newborn mothers and young people getting small children. They have a very special focus for the environment. So
great. Other questions? Gentleman over there, blue shirt.
Thank you. Hi, I am Sonic from Copenhagen Business School, Marketing Department. I have a question about how do you relate, thank you for the presentation, how do you relate to the concept of planned obsolescence?
What?
How do you relate to the concept of planned obsolescence? That it's actually being, that the life
products are designed to
not to last
become
long.
obsolete.
Okay, well, first of all, we always set requirements on quality, so that you at least I can't decide if you want the newest iPhone. We can't. Smartphone. You can't cover for that. But durability and quality is always part of the requirement. You should never have to think that you buy water on a bottle if you want to buy a cleaning product with an eco-label. So the thing that you know that you buy quality, so it have a long lifespan, is a very big focus, because that's an environmental impact in itself. So.
Hello, I'm Banu. I come from Istanbul, Turkey. I'm a designer, artist, independent. I'm here just on my own. I don't represent any company. I'm not covered by the government. I'm here to be inspired by people who are like-minded, and I create workshops for children. And I'm just wondering, when are we going to start speaking without the jackets of companies, just solely about more personal, so we can do something really for this world? I just wanted to make a comment, because this is why I'm here. We know the good things, but we all know the bad picture. So let's try to find solutions, rather than hearing all the good things that the companies are doing. Sorry. And how many people are here just for their own, like me, who came by day, not to represent a company, just themselves? Yes. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I came here for both my company and myself, so I straddle the line. And I'm looking to build a global brand that creates better products. I have a choice of 20 different certifications that I have to go through, and each one of them costs money. I kind of know how I do my matrix to decide, but I'm curious from your perspective, how many certifications do you think a product should carry? And how do you think that we should create a decision matrix, or how do your customers decide which ones they're going to invest in?
Do you ask me? Then I believe they just need one label. You have to choose a label that covers the sustainability. If you wish to have sustainability in your approach, you can also decide to, I don't know, if they have an eco-label for technique, super technique, I don't know. But if you choose for sustainability and the circular economy, I would believe you should choose one label that covers the whole life cycle span and have a circular approach to the life cycle. So I would believe you should take an eco-label, which is according to the ISO 20400 and type 1, yeah. So.
Yeah, because then you can trust that the criteria that are used are really the right ones, and then that the product or service really fulfills them. I think that's but of course it is a problem that it's a lot of work if you have to compare, if you don't from the start rely on one only.
Geography probably matters as well, so the swan is great here.
Yeah, the swan is great here, but further down south you should maybe take the EU eco-label, and if you come from America, they also have an eco-label, so I could, yes. But I can also, if I can add something, that some of the other type of labels, like the FSC and the PEFC, which we support very much, but they only focus on the sustainability of the forestry, and then we implement that. So the Nordic Swan eco-label doesn't have their own system concerning sustainable forestry. We implement other trustworthy labels into our criteria and use those. So we cover more labels within.
But maybe there would be some work for comparative studies to really try to take the different eco-labels that are out there, and make a comparative study which then could inform people easier that what are the differences and which of those are really more credible than the other ones.
Thank you. We'll take one more question. The gentleman in black right there has been waiting for a while.
Thank you, Dag Duberg from Traket. Thanks for interesting presentations. What we heard during these 2 days is that sustainability is a very complex issue, and it has a scientific part, and it also has a political part, which might not always be coherent. And since the Swan label is, I think it's an initiative from the Nordic Minister of Council of Ministers, the criteria that you set in the Swan label, is it purely based on science, or is there a political dimension? Is there any connection to political views on sustainability things?
The groundwork that we do is based on science, but the criteria needs to be decided on by both national and Nordic board. And within the board there is both the authorities and NGOs and consumer representatives and representatives of the industry from the whole all Nordic countries. So we in the Secretariat we deliver the science and come with a solid suggestion based on science where should we set the boundaries. And I couldn't assure you that it would always be so that the politicians and the boards would decide on that, but in 99.9% they do that. We come with, if you come with solid, good explanations on how we and consider things thoughtfully, then even politicians listen.
Thank you. Thank you very much to our speakers. That concludes our session. Thank you very much to the audience. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much for all your wonderful questions. Thank you to the technicians. Thank you to my colleagues. We are now having a break, and after the break, there's still the grand finale to this forum.